You're listening to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. Welcome to the Season 2 premiere of City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. I'm a screenwriter, filmmaker, and the creator and founder of the Paris Underground Radio podcast network. Each week, I sit down with an artist or creative to talk about what inspires them, what their creative process is like, and how Paris plays into it all. My guest this week is American multi-hypenate Emma Scherer. Emma is a dancer, singer, actress, and choreographer who moved to Paris 16 years ago and fell into the world of French musical theater. Don't worry, we talk about it. Since then, she's performed in Paris's most well-known theaters in productions like 42nd Street, Singin in the Rain, The Wizard of Oz, and The Producers. She's a part of an improvisation musical theater troupe where she's performed in French and in English. She's also performed in the French versions of Sing Off and France's Got Talent. Emma can next be seen as swing assistant dance captain in Mamma Mia at the Casino de Paris beginning on October 21st. Hello, Emma. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Emma Scherer. I am French-American, originally from Washington State. I grew up there. Yeah, born and raised in the same town. I started dancing when I was 3 years old and just never stopped. And then got into, theater and musical theater in high school and moved to France officially when I was 20, but I originally arrived in Paris when I was 18, and so traveled around for a while. But I am currently a dancer, singer, actress, choreographer, dance teacher. Yeah, living the dream.
Multi-hyphenate extraordinaire.
Yes, exactly.
Do you come from a family of dancers?
A family of dancers, not everyone, but actually my grandmother was a dancer with, not Martha Graham herself, but with Martha Graham's dancers, if that makes sense. But she was the daughter of an admiral in the Navy. So let's just say the social norms of the time would not allow her to pursue dance as a career, probably as she would have wanted to. So yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to sort of close that circle and live my dream, but also sort of get to, help her complete her dance journey as well.
That's lovely. This is your grandmother, you said?
Yeah, this is my mom's mom.
And does she know about your dance career?
Well, she unfortunately passed away, a while ago now, in 2006. So yeah, when I turned 19, so she's no longer here, but she got to see me arrive in Paris and was always really, really encouraging around my creativity and dance, of course. And so I still keep her with me very close.
What's your earliest memory of dancing?
That's a very interesting question. First memory of dancing. I have some memories that might be a little bit like, I don't want to call them false memories, but because let's just say my family were big on the home videos. So, so we have a lot of videos of my first dance recitals and also just my brother and I dancing around like crazy people in the house, as you do.
Sure.
Yeah, so I remember the video we have of my very first dance recital, so I must have been 4. And I know when I go back and watch it, I think, I looked pretty confident. Like I looked really happy and just, in my element. So yeah, no, I think I've always felt in my element on stage dancing. And
do you still feel that way now on stage? Do you still feel as confident as you once did?
Yeah, I think, yes. Yeah, I think now when I'm on stage, it is just kind of like home. And also, even now, I feel maybe even more at ease and at home for many, many reasons, probably just because of now, the many years of experience. But also, actually, I a while ago, like 10 years ago, I want to say, I started doing improv. So I perform in an improv musical, which is called New, the improvised musical. It's really, really cool. It's absolutely crazy. The concept is insane, but it's really fun. And it was kind of one of those moments where once I realized, oh, I can actually go on stage and improvise an entire musical, like improvise songs and, singing something that, I'm making up the lyrics as I go. If I can do that, anything can happen to me on stage and I will be able to manage it somehow. I will be able to, to figure out how to do it. So
that's insane. I could see why that would give you a confidence boost.
Totally.
Is the musical in French or in English?
So there are actually two teams. The French team, they perform fairly often, and the English team, we perform not as much, just because obviously we're in France and there's a bigger audience for French shows. And I have performed in French, but I prefer to do it in English.
I feel like improvisation, a musical that's improvised and in a second language is a lot.
It's a lot. It's a challenge for sure. But I mean, I enjoy challenges. That's something I've always enjoyed. So now, like, I worked a lot as a swing in musicals, and I'm currently working as a swing, which in my mind is one of the more challenging positions to have.
What does it mean to be a swing?
So a swing in a musical is basically like an understudy for the entire ensemble.
Wow.
So, like, if somebody in the ensemble is sick, or maybe they're an understudy and they're going on for the lead role, then there's, a hole in the ensemble. So somebody needs to jump in and fill that spot. And so swings are there to fill in those spots. So usually the show I'm currently doing, we are 2 female swings and 2 male swings. And the other female swing and myself, we have 7 total tracks to learn. And so we have to learn basically what everyone's doing all the time and be able to jump in sort of at the last minute if needed. So
does that stress you out? Does that scare you?
No. Which is, I mean, I think being a swing is not necessarily a spot that everybody would enjoy, because it is it could be super stressful. And I want to say, I don't think I get stressed. I think it's more like excited, and it sort of forces me to just be super focused. And I've always liked adrenaline rushes. So whenever you get, the call of like, you're going on, or, oh, so-and-so just injured themselves, get on your costumes and be on stage in 5 minutes. It's a bit of a rush, and I enjoy that. So it's more of a sort of excitement and a thrill for me rather than a stress.
That's good. I mean, you did say you like challenges, so that's
good. Yeah, exactly.
So what brought you to Paris in the first place?
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me the question, why did you come to Paris to do musical theater?
Mm-hmm.
Totally valid question. And the answer is, I did not come to Paris to do musical theater, actually. I initially came to Paris because, for whatever reason, I have dreamt of Paris my entire life. As a kid, it was never a question of, if I go and live in Paris one day. It was like, oh, no, yeah, when I go and live in Paris. And I'm not exactly sure why, but that was just always my dream. And I started learning French when I was 11. So I was lucky enough to start learning at a young age, because in the US, that is very rare to start foreign languages at that age. And I just fell in love with the language. And I've always been super into, French culture and, artists and the Impressionists. And so when I finished high school, I decided, so I did not get into my top college preference, which was a bit of a, blow, and sort of made me step back and think about, okay, what do I want to do? So I decided to go to one of the colleges I got into, but I decided to defer for a year and give myself a gap year to sort of travel. And that's when I first arrived in Paris. So that was 2006, around this time of year, actually. It was in September. And I sort of had like family friends who housed me for a while. And then Paris was my home base. I traveled all over Europe from Paris. And then at the end of the year, I was supposed to go back and study in the US. And I just decided, no, I'm not doing that. But I was still like thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do though? It was not, in my mind, going into a creative field was not a realistic career option. It was also always a dream of mine, of course, to be a performer. But in my head, it was like either you are a movie star who makes, millions, or like you can't make a living. And so I initially was going to move to Paris, go to school to get a degree in foreign language and become a translator or an interpreter. I love foreign language. That would have been totally fun. But then I found a musical theater school in Paris, and I thought to myself, oh, okay, you know what? I could get my visa that way. I might as well get my visa because I didn't really care what I was doing. I just wanted to be in Paris. So I decided to go to the school and got my student visa. And it wasn't until the second year at school when I sort of realized not only is this possible, like, oh, I think you actually can make a career as a performer, even if you're not a movie star, but that I think I actually have what it takes. I think I'm capable of making this happen.
So musical theater and France are not two concepts that usually come together in my mind.
No.
So what is musical theater in France like as opposed to in the US, for example?
I mean, I have never worked in the US, actually, which is me. So I basically spent my whole adult life here. But I've gotten to work with a lot of British teams. So a lot of people from the West End who have come over to do shows here. But I don't know, it's kind of an interesting, musical theater in France is interesting because you have certain shows where they bring people from, like I was saying, the West End. Like I was in Singin in the Rain at the Châtelet, and then also 42nd Street. And those were both teams from the West End who came and put on the shows, and they just had a couple Frenchies,
token French people,
stragglers, that they brought in to be a part of those shows. So you have those sort of things where they just sort of bring in English-speaking musical theater.
Okay.
Then you have places like the Mogador and Stage Entertainment, and they do like what I would call proper musical theater, like The Lion King. I'm currently working with them on Mamma Mia, so we're rehearsing that right now. Chicago, Cabaret, and they do all of these shows completely translated into French, which is strange sometimes for, if you really know the shows in English.
Yeah.
But I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's great to bring the sort of traditionally Anglo-Saxon musical theater and introduce that to the French audience. I think it's really important. And then you have what I would call, what a lot of French people think of as musical theater, but I would call staged concerts.
Yes.
Which would be, if anybody out there knows of like Mozart, l'Opéra Rock, Mozart, the rock opera. There was Robin Hood with Mat Pokora. So, you get kind of like poppy stars in them. And totally, I think there's a place for that. For me personally, I would not call that musical theater because it's more about the music and the spectacle and the visuals than the actual story that's being told. So yeah, for me, that's kind of where then you also have the smaller productions, which, I mean, there are some really, really, really high quality smaller productions in France, which I'm not sure, I guess you could compare it to like an off-Broadway kind of thing, or some of the smaller venues in the West End producing some like newer, creative sort of pieces.
What happens when a 21-year-old college student from a small town in Kansas, who's never even before stepped foot in a big American city, decides to hop on a plane and spend her summer in Paris, France? Well, that's what award-winning student journalist Abby Riffle just did. And, lucky for us, she recorded her experiences along the way, beginning a month before she left and ending a month after she got back. Abby will take you along for the ride in the brand new podcast, A Broadening My Horizons on Paris Underground Radio, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We'll be right back with City of Muses after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. My understanding is that musical theater isn't something that's really introduced to actors when they're in school necessarily. Like in the US, often even just normal kids will perform something at the end of their school year. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that even actors who are in school for acting won't perform in musical theater. Is that right?
Yeah, that is very, very true. And I think only relatively recently has that started to shift. Because I know, so one of my theater teachers when I was in school in France, she actually was the one who founded the school, and she comes from pure theater. And the reason why she ended up founding the school was because when she was younger and when she was studying theater, she was really interested in taking some dance classes, learning how to sing. And basically her teachers said, no, if you do theater, like you need to be 100% theater. And I think that's very French, I would say, because there are so many incredible dancers, incredible singers, incredible actors in France, but it's only recently that people have started to realize, oh, we can actually be really good at multiple arts at the same time and, have some real triple threats showing up. There's some really, really incredible French performers who are really, really genuine triple threats. But for me, that's a fairly recent thing.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done any of these bigger major productions? You said Singin in the Rain and 42nd Street, but those were like British productions that came here. Have you ever been in one of these big musicals, but a French production of it?
Yeah, so I would say one of the first really big musicals I did was The Wizard of Oz. This was in 2014. Ooh, goes by fast. And that was actually really cool because it was the West End production of The Wizard of Oz, but it was translated into French, and the whole cast was French. Well, French and Belgian, because it was a co-production. But it was really interesting to have sort of the creative team be Anglo-Saxon and all of the artists be French or Belgian.
Yeah, I was wondering if there were any cultural misunderstandings in that rehearsal process.
Yes. I mean, I think, anybody who works hard, will end up producing something amazing. Anybody who has a really incredible vision and, an amazing team. I know personally, there are some things that, oh gosh, I'm French, technically, I got my citizenship 5 years ago. I've been working with the French for ages, but there are still some things that just I have a lot of trouble with. And one of them is time management.
Yes.
And being on time. And that's something that whenever I work with an Anglo-Saxon creative team, I appreciate very much, because for me, if you say we're starting at 10 o'clock, that means we're starting at 10 o'clock. So if you want to arrive, have a coffee and chat with your friends or have a stretch, you have to arrive at least 15 minutes before, I believe, well, I always heard this, early is on time is late, don't even bother showing up. So that's what I grew up, learning. And for the French, it's often, 10 o'clock, we'll arrive at 10, maybe 10:03. We'll grab our coffee, hang out, chat with our buddies. So usually it means we won't probably actually start working until at least 10:15, if not later. And of course, that's totally a stereotype, and it's not always like that. And in the end, it's not really a big deal. I just, for my American brain, I wish they would tell. And actually, sometimes when I do immersive theater as well with one of my best friends founded a company. And so we've done many shows together. I do the choreography for them as well. And we sort of created an agreement that when they schedule rehearsals, and it says 10, I always double check. Now, is that like French 10 o'clock or is that American 10 o'clock? And then they're able to say, Emma, get there at 10:15. And then I'll be there at 10. So yeah. But that's just, I think that's just something that I've had to manage.
Yeah, I can relate. I've made a few films here in France, and I've noticed exactly the same with the film crew and with the actors too. You say, show up on set. This is when we're ready to go. Call time is 10 a.m., for example, and people will show up at 10 or 10:05, usually not too late, but then they have coffee, then they have a cigarette, then they talk to their friends. And I'm like, this is all stuff that should have been done before 10.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's a different culture.
Exactly. And I also know that the French like to talk about things a lot more.
Yes. And the history of things.
Yes. Like, I don't know, the French creative process, and again, this is totally like generalization, like not true for everyone, but generally speaking, I have noticed that the French are very cerebral in their creative processes, whereas I find, especially Americans, are more about just jump in and do it. Maybe it will be terrible, but we just give it a try and then we go from there. Whereas the French like to really sort of hash it out, talk it through, get all the details, out there, and then they'll give it a try. So that as well, that's been interesting to just sort of see both sides. And I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I think it's just a question of what you're used to. And I know for me personally, I prefer to just sort of jump in and do things, but that probably isn't necessarily the best way for everyone to be creative. So it's just interesting. I find it fascinating, really.
I do too. I was told on a related topic, I was told to ask you about your experience with tap dancing in France.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I mean, what would you like to know about that?
How do the French feel about tap dancing?
So tap has relatively recently, I think, become more popular in France. Definitely not a dance style that is, well, it's not French. It's not in the French culture to start off with. And like most Americans or, UK residents, when they start dancing at a young age, it's sort of normal to do, well, you just get started with ballet, jazz, and tap. You just do it all from a young age, which is not the case in France. But there are a lot more people learning how to tap. And I think that could be for multiple reasons, with more like film musicals like La La Land coming out and people, watching that and thinking it's cool. I'd like to think that maybe Singin' in the Rain and 42nd Street had an influence on that as well, because those are obviously really big tap musicals. And I was very lucky. We were very successful. Those shows had a lot of people, a lot of spectators. And then also I have a very good friend who founded a company, the RB Dance Company. His name is Romain Rachlin. And I got to dance with this company right at the beginning when he got started. And he sort of takes tap in a much more modern, contemporary direction. And we got to do France Has Got Talent, actually. We were on France Has Got Talent. That was, like 5 years ago that we did that. And so that was really cool to see that style of tap also sort of gain an audience. And because I also think a lot of the French people, if they have an experience of tap dancing, it is the very classical sort of, like Fred Astaire, and people often think it's kind of old-fashioned. Whereas in the US and in the UK, they have for quite a while now sort of developed a more modern way of tap dancing. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Syncopated Ladies. They're incredible. They're an American group of women who tap their asses off like to, modern music like Beyonce and all of that. And it's really incredible. So it's cool that to see in France as well, like that sort of evolution of tap into a sort of more modern way as well. Even though I'm still a fan, I love old fashioned tap. That's my jam. That's my bread and butter.
I mean, it's beautiful. How could you not love it?
Mm-hmm.
How did the judges and the audience and all of them react to you on France's Got Talent?
They loved it. Yeah, it was very cool. We got a very, very positive response. Yeah. I mean, we all worked really, really hard as well for that. Working for Romain is great in that he's so detail oriented and precise, and I have so much appreciation for that. So yeah, a lot of hard work went into that, and it went over really well. So
fabulous. And I understand that you choreograph as well.
Yes, I do. I don't have any like massive musicals under my belt yet. That's kind of the goal. I think as a performer, and especially as a dancer, I mean, that's just one of the things you sort of know as a dancer is someday your career as a dancer is going to not necessarily come to an end, but it has to evolve in some way, because you're just not able to do the same things. Or maybe you are, but you just don't want to anymore.
Sure.
Like, that's something that I'm sort of realizing is I still love being on stage, and I definitely still want to keep performing. But the older I get, I'm going to be 36 in a few days.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And the older I get, the more I sort of feel like okay with being more just part of the like creative process and not necessarily needing to get on stage every single night, 7-8 shows a week.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get to take a little break, and that's okay.
Yeah.
When you choreograph, do you prefer musicals? Do you prefer a certain type of music? Like, what's your sweet spot?
My all-time favorite is very Fosse inspired 60s style jazz. I would say definitely like theater jazz is where that's my happy place. So any kind of jazzy, orchestral, big band kind of thing with a lot of horn hits and percussion that I can really accentuate with movement, and something that I can tell a story or make it quirky or, find some sort of weird personality to take on during the dance.
What's your ideal number of dancers to work with?
Oh, gosh. I have no idea. I think that depends that would depend on the project. I would say right now, like 2, just because when you don't have the infrastructure behind you to create a massive show, I don't know. I think sometimes I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to the organization. Not lazy. No, I'll be nice to myself. I have to motivate myself to organize when there isn't the infrastructure. And it's much easier to organize with less dancers than with more. I filmed a video, I want to say, it was like 6 years ago now, that has gone, well, not viral by today's standards, but I'm very proud because it has, I think, like 1,700,000 views on YouTube now, which for me, when I created it, I was literally just, I have this idea. I want to actually see this idea through to the end because I have a lot of ideas all the time, but it just takes such an effort to actually produce them. And this time I actually went through with it and produced it all the way to the end. So super, super proud of that. And it was a bonus. It's a bonus that apparently people enjoy that.
I saw it. It was fabulous.
Oh, nice. All right, cool.
And I can include a link for our audience too, for our listeners, so they can find it in the show notes.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Well, hope everybody enjoys.
Get you to 2 million views.
Yay. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like it's not monetized. I don't make anything because I don't have rights to the music, but still it's always nice to be appreciated. And yeah, that one there were 6 of us dancing. And then I did another video that was really just I took choreography that I created for classes I was teaching and just asked a bunch of my professional dancer friends to learn it and then just film it. And it's like a little teaser. And that also has over 1 million views now, which is insane. But I think that was, maybe there were like 12 dancers, something like that. But yeah, I mean, the dream is to eventually be part of, the bigger productions where I can work with, lots of talented people.
Is Paris the most romantic city in the world? host Lily Heisey answers this very question in her podcast, Romancing in Paris, which takes you through the city, arrondissement by arrondissement, by exploring the most romantic and hidden spots Paris has to offer. Listen now to Romancing in Paris on parisundergroundradio.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back with City of Muses after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. So let's imagine that I have a magic wand and I can give you free reign and infrastructure and unlimited budget and unlimited dancers, unlimited talented dancers. Mm-hmm. What is like your dream production to direct and choreograph?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think I'd love to be part of something new, but something along the lines of like some of the newer musicals, but that are in the classic style, like Drowsy Chaperone. That's not actually that recent. I feel I'm dating myself. In my head, the Drowsy Chaperone is still super recent because I do love that sort of classic theater jazz, Guys and Dolls, West Side Story, you know, all of that. I love those sort of universes and those worlds. But any show where, I don't know, I could do some quirky 60s style stuff would be definitely so cool. Yeah, I don't know, but I think ideally I'd love to be a part of something new because as well, like now a lot of the older musicals, they've been done so many times. And I think every single choreographer who has done a version of those shows, it's really cool because everybody gets to sort of interpret it in a different way. And so I would love to also be able to do that. But then I also think it's really cool, the idea of creating something, you know, brand new and being able to really put your stamp on something.
And you said you're going to be in Mamma Mia, is that right?
Yes. I'm currently rehearsing for Mamma Mia. So that we'll be at the Casino de Paris, starting at the end of October.
Wow.
And I'm a swing and assistant dance captain.
Wow.
Yes.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It's a lot of work, but again, it's a position that I really enjoy.
So where can people find you if they want to keep up to date with what's going on in your world?
Yes. So you can find me. Probably the easiest way is to just go on my website because it has links to YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I don't have a TikTok at the moment yet. I don't know. Maybe I will. I feel maybe I'm too old for TikTok. Is that no?
I don't know. It just feels like another thing. So maybe I'm too old too.
Yeah. And I mean, I think social media for me is sort of one of those necessary things for the business, but I don't always enjoy being on social media. But I like sharing what I do. So I do always share when I'm in a show, if I have a new projects or classes, if I'm teaching anywhere, I will always share that. So my website is, if I remember correctly, www.emma-scherer.com. The dash is very important.
Perfect. And I'll put links in for that too, so people can find you really, really easily.
Cool.
Thank you so much. I really feel like I could keep speaking to you forever. Thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to. It's really cool to, be able to share just a little bit of musical theater in Paris.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to City of Muses. If you've liked what you heard, please take a moment to rate and review it. This is the fastest and easiest way to help support the podcast. Tell a friend who could use a little inspiration. You can also subscribe to the Paris Underground Radio newsletter over on our website, parisundergroundradio.com, which comes out every Sunday and gives a little peek into what's on the network for the week ahead. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. You can find me on all socials at Jennyphoria. That's JennyPhoria. Thank you for listening, and may you find inspiration wherever you go. City of Muses was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio.